Yeah, so hello everyone again. I'm very grateful to all speakers who are taking part today in this very timely, I would say, discussion, maybe very unfortunate discussion we would have today. And I'm grateful to all participants from different countries, from Georgia, from United States, from Europe, different countries from Europe, to all our diplomats, experts who joined the discussion today. And we have very authoritative distinguished speakers. It's Ambassador retired Jan Saakashvili, former ambassador to Georgia, European Parliament member, former Prime Minister of Lithuania, Mr. Andrius Kubilius, Ms. Salome Samadashvili, who is currently a member of Georgian Parliament and former ambassador to Brussels, European Union, and Ms. Tinatin Khidasheli will join soon. She is the chair of Civic idea NGO and former defense minister of Georgia. I was going to ask first our speakers from United States and Brussels, but looking at the situation in Georgia, that is actually changing very, very fast. And maybe even 2 days ago, I wouldn't predict that we will discuss such developments today. I would like to start with Ms. Salome Samadashvili, and I would like to ask you to make your opening remarks and maybe please, if possible, briefly, what really changed in these 2 days, because from my point of view, lots of things changed even yesterday and today. Please, Ms. Salome Samadashvili.
Well, thank you very much. I think that what I wanted to focus in today's discussion in my remarks was how Georgia has become an insolvent democracy, I would say, over the past 9 years, and how that is taking the country deeper and deeper into political crisis, and in my view, very clearly away from our chosen Euro-Atlantic path. The developments in the last 2 days, I think that make quite clear that at least the Georgian Dream government is very determined to do everything that they can in order to fuel, to basically fuel this extreme polarization, which has been taken to the level that I think we have not seen, obviously, in the last 9 years. Return of Saakashvili has, I'm not going to go into assessing, it was his decision to come back. What I can assess is that I will not, I do not want to judge his decision, but I can only assess the result. And the result is clearly a very, very deep polarization. And I think that at this point, everyone here in Georgia, people like us, who have committed politically, I would say, to diffusing this polarization, and our friends abroad who I think understand very well that this polarization simply does not give a chance to the country. I think that we all are very upset about the circumstances. I think that at this point it's difficult to predict, how things will move forward. What I can say is that the government clearly thinks, I think that thinking of Ivanishvili is that he can get through this, that he will keep Saakashvili in prison. He will not only not give him the treatment that would be mandated to any citizen, who is under the circumstances, but actually do everything in order to disgrace him. And to the way he was treated, Saakashvili, yesterday, when he was basically kidnapped and given really rough treatment at the new prison facility where he was transferred. I think this is all part of calculated strategy, as well as releasing his recordings and basically attempting to convince everyone that he's not really, hunger strike. I'm very worried. I will tell you this. I'm very worried about the health of the people who are involved, including my friend Helen Koshtaria, who is on a hunger strike. I see her every day in parliament, not in prison, thankfully, and her health is deteriorating quite quickly. As you know, her demand is transferring Saakashvili to the proper medical facility. I think that, in terms of sort of thinking what the West can do right now, because everybody, I mean, my feeling is, and my friends, our colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, my feeling is that nobody really knows how to respond to the situation and what to do. I think that we have to focus on several things in the coming days in order to find the way out of this impasse. First is pushing government very clearly on respecting the rights of Saakashvili and respecting his right to proper medical care. That is the key to basically diffusing the tension. I don't know if the deal can be made between the UNM and the government that they will transfer him to the hospital, and the UNM will take an obligation not to engage in any kind of, rallies around the hospital. And maybe this can be a way out, because clearly at this point, the parties are moving farther away from the positions are moving farther away and not getting closer. There is no dialogue. We have come up with the initiative, with the proposal to maybe start a dialogue between the opposition and the government, and it has not. It was responded the way what we saw yesterday, and clearly this is not the way to move forward. The problem is, of course, for us who basically believe that the government in this country needs to change and needs to change through the elections. I think one of the big problems is that with each election that takes place here, Georgia basically demonstrates more and more clearly that it is not the society which can resolve its conflict by the elections. Because the election rules are not, free and fair. The way the elections are conducted is not really the way to move.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Salome Samadashvili, for your position and this very brief overview of what's going on in Georgia. Even now, when we're discussing, we observe protest rallies near the government's building, and tomorrow it's announced that protest rallies will be held in many places simultaneously. So, Ambassador Jan Kelly, please, my question is, maybe 2 days ago, I was going to ask you in the beginning, what is the approach that the US should have towards the situation in Georgia? But today I will have more specific question. During the visit of US Assistant Secretary of State to Georgia and to the region, we observed developments yesterday when Mikhail Saakashvili was really actually, it looked like kidnapped, because he was taken against his will, without any informing his relatives or lawyers and etc. So how you evaluate this development? For me, it's shocking. What is it for you during the visit of Assistant Secretary of State to Georgia? Please, Ambassador.
Well, thanks, Egor. I agree with you. There seems to be no attempt by the government to de-escalate the situation. And it seems on a daily basis, in both their actions and in their rhetoric, they're trying to escalate the tension. This event of yesterday, without any kind of announcement or any kind of attempt to be transparent, what the government was doing with Mr. Saakashvili, they simply put him in a helicopter and didn't take him to the kind of facility that the ombudswoman and the Council of Doctors said he should go to. Instead, they took him to a prison, military prison, which was, of course, full of all sorts of very negative symbolism about Saakashvili himself, given those notorious videos of 2012. And it seemed to be just another way to humiliate him. And of course, this came on the heels of those videos put out by the Ministry of Justice, which kind of took my breath away in itself, which purported to show him eating, when in fact, as the ombudswoman herself said, these were medically prescribed minerals and other kinds of medical prescriptions for his condition. So it raises all kinds of suspicions about what the ultimate goal is for the government, and it just seems to me that many of their actions seem designed to provoke UNM into some kind of action that can be put down with great force. And this is to be charitable, it is really improper for a ruling party to do, to try and provoke a group into violence. But I think that the West is extremely concerned about this situation and about the overall trajectory of this government. I think over the past year or so, you've seen a number of steps which really call into question this government's stated vocation to want to join the West. So I think in Washington, there's going to be a real evaluation of support. I think there will always be support for Georgia's territorial integrity, for its ability to deter aggression. But I think there's going to be some real questions raised about possible conditionality of assistance when it comes to assistance to the government. This government really has to I think, turn things around because by all appearances, they're turning their back on the West.
I would use this situation to ask a question because maybe they want to use it for TV. Tavara channel is asking, what can Georgia's Western allies do to stop the violation of Mikhail Saakashvili's race?
I think my good friend Kelly Degnan did exactly the right thing today. I saw she put out a very strong statement calling in no uncertain terms for Saakashvili to be treated humanely, for the government to follow the recommendation of its own ombudswoman and the recommendation of the Council of Doctors. Move Mr. Saakashvili to a private hospital where he can receive the kind of treatment that he needs. So I think that is a first and absolutely necessary step for the government to take. And in terms of other steps, like I say, I think you're going to see a reevaluation policy towards Georgia absent the return to the agreement with the EU, some kind of indication of what they plan to do with the Inaklia port and Georgia's connection with the West, what exactly they want from the EU. Why are they turning to the Asian Development Bank and rejecting EU assistance? These are all questions that need to be answered before we can really I think, respond. But right now, of course, the most urgent issue is taking Mr. Saakashvili out of Gildani Military Hospital and getting him the treatment that he needs.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador. Mr. Andrius Kubilius, Ambassador Keller just mentioned the EU approach towards the situation in Georgia. Could you please evaluate current developments and say what should be the EU approach? And should European Union be more active in regard with Saakashvili's situation? Because we saw yesterday very, I would say, dangerous developments, not helping to depolarize the situation in Georgia. Mr. Kubilius, please.
Well, thanks a lot. Of course, you are asking me a question which I am difficult to answer. You know, what is EU position? Because I am, you know, humbled member of European Parliament, and I cannot answer for all, you know, EU. Well, I can tell my own opinion, or let's say what I hear in different corridors, and what we are discussing among ourselves, among the friends of Georgia, which really are very much concerned about recent developments. And I would say just, you know, three very clear, you know, messages. Of course, you know, how Saakashvili is treated by the ruling party is something which is really very bad and sad. Especially knowing, you know, how much Saakashvili during his term managed to achieve in order really for Georgia to become, at that time, you know, and until recent time, you know, a leader among Eastern Partnership countries in its wish to integrate towards EU. So that's one thing. I don't know if my words can convince the ruling party to change their behavior. I am not you know, very much believe in that, but I would, you know, use this opportunity to appeal directly to Misha Saakashvili. I would say that, you know, really, he, with his hunger strike, he managed to achieve a lot, you know, to turn attention towards what is happening in Georgia. And my wish and my request as a friend of Misha Saakashvili and as friend of Georgia would be very simple. You know, stop this hunger strike, exit from that, you know, really your health is much more important, you know, than, you know, anything else. And that would be my first message. You know, really, I would wish to convince, you know, Misha Saakashvili to you know, to go for, you know, to go out from this, you know, very difficult developments with his own, you know, own health, and hunger strike should be stopped. Second, really, on, you know, on where is Georgia and how things are looking like. I agree really with Ambassador and some of my other colleagues from European Parliament who see really that Georgia is, for time being, during the last period of time, is very much damaging its, you know, its position, international position, its perception, you know, in the Western community as a country which really wants to join EU and NATO. I don't know if I had a lot of possibilities to talk with, you know, different people from ruling party, from Georgian Dream. I was trying to speak them out, you know, very clearly, you know, what kind of mistakes they are doing, you know, with some kind of brutal language against opposition, with actions, with, you know, with abandoning promises to EU leaders like they did with Charles Michel agreement, or refusal, you know, of EU financial assistance and not fulfilling conditions which were attached to that assistance. Everything that creates really a very bad image of Georgia. You know. not only of Georgian government, but of Georgia. And that is very much damaging, the will and the wish of Georgian people to become really, to approach, to integrate themselves into EU and NATO. That is what we need to speak out in a very clear way. And I would not be surprised that the time can come when Georgians will need to make the choice. Either Georgian dream in power or a real integration to European Union, because that can become very difficult to combine. That's what we see as recent developments and recent danger. And the third point, also, quite critical. I would appeal to our friends in opposition to United National Movement, to other political parties. I would urge really, them to have, deep soul search exercise, to look much more deeply into their, strategy, into their program, into their, long-term, actions. I see really that this is very much needed. They need to understand how to win again, hearts and minds of Georgian people. And here, the last 2 years with some kind of, attempts to win those hearts and minds in the streets was not very successful. I cannot be, a very good advisor, on those issues, but how to win back, hearts and minds. But I would urge really opposition to look, more deeply into themselves, and to look more deeply into mood and hopes of Georgian people, and really to see what is needed to be done by opposition itself, how opposition needs to find new instruments, new strategies, new approaches towards the voters in order really to come back and to help Georgia to become again, leader in integration towards EU.
I would like to just a brief question, if possible. A journalist asks me to ask it, and I will repeat again. It's not my question; it's a question from media. Do you think that the Georgian government has finally turned from the Western course and taken the path of Russian-style so-called sovereign democracy, which in reality is authoritarian rule? Please, Mr. Kubilius.
Well, I see really, I would not make a final judgment, Putin and Lukashenko perhaps are different from, ruling government here in Georgia, in Tbilisi. But I would say in a very clear way that ruling party and the government, they are losing trust among friends in the Western community. And I don't know if they are doing that, deliberately, if they want to lose that trust, and then to say there is no other alternative, just to turn, back to and to make friends somewhere in Russia, or that is what they're doing is simply, because of they do not understand what integration towards EU demands from the ruling party, from establishment of real mature democracy in the country, what it demands from establishing rule of law, and so on and so on. So still I am leaving myself with some kind of doubt. Maybe this is simply a wrong and approach and big mistakes, which unfortunately the ruling party is allowing themselves to do.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kubilius. Ms. Tinatin, Khidasheli, I hope you're here. Or maybe not. Yeah, hello.
Hello.
So today's discussion topics was implications for Western integration for security. So I would like to ask you to make your remarks on how this situation, this destabilization, permanent actually chaos in Georgia affects security of the country. And maybe I would add like usage of radical groups by the government in different situations like elections, so 5th of July. From my point of view, it's really like disturbing and not very useful for Georgian national security. Please, Ms. Tinatin, Khidasheli.
Thank you, Egor, and it's a pleasure for me to see you all here at this discussion. Well, a couple of things before I go to answering your question. First, Ambassador Kelly was talking about Saakashvili's imprisonment in military hospital. He is not in a military hospital. There is nothing wrong with the military hospital, and I wish he was there. It is entirely US funded, US equipped, US technology-based hospital in Georgia. He is in a prison hospital, which is a completely different place. And yes, it is very dangerous. And as at least formerly human rights lawyer, as I can guarantee that if this case goes to Strasbourg, there is no way the Georgian government will win this case, because it is and absolutely it qualifies for the inhuman and degrading treatment of a prisoner because of the reasons that Ambassador already mentioned. So I just wanted to clarify that there is nothing wrong with the military hospital. It kind of hurts my feelings when people say something like that about the military hospital. And the other thing, very interesting, actually, this is how I want to move to your question, Igor, goes to another comment that was made here about Georgia refusing European Union's assistance. It is a very important to know exactly what was the substitute to it, and it was not European Development Bank's money. It would have been more or less okay if it was if it was Asian Development Bank's money. In reality, this assistance was post-COVID, from the post-COVID relief fund, and it was meant for fighting COVID measures carried out by the Georgian government. This is the assistance that government refused to. And what we did in real life was that we took money for exactly the same purposes for much worse conditions from the Chinese AIIB bank. And everybody who is aware of this bank knows what kind of financial instrument we are talking about. And this is actually the major problem if you look at the bigger picture of Georgia today. And Saakashvili's story is just one piece in this big puzzle that we are dealing with on a daily basis. That Georgia has started playing this very dangerous game as if proving to our partners, both European Union and United States, as well as other international organizations and countries, that we have, as if we have another alternative, as if there are alternative ways Georgia can go, and as if we can do something that will risk Georgia being lost for the West as an ally and partner in this region. And China is one of those alternatives, as it is constantly conveyed and constantly heard from the messages of the government representatives. So when the question is, as it was asked previously, whether Georgian government finally went the other way to Russia, to Moscow, I would say that I would agree completely with Mr. Kubilius. No, it did not. But what it did, what it is doing, is actually even more dangerous. And if we knew that, okay, this is the government which made a decision, we are moving to Moscow, and then I'm not saying it's a good thing, but what I'm saying is that then whole country would have been on the streets today. Then the story would be so clear and so obvious that we would not have problems that we have today with the civil resistance and mobilization in a country. But the matter of fact is that they are not capable even of that. The biggest problem of this government is that they are not capable of any decision making. They do not have any chosen direction. They do not have any principal matters solved and decided for themselves, and then the plan for achieving those goals and decisions that they took. This is the biggest problem of this government. It is absolutely impossible to predict what they will do tomorrow, exactly because their decisions, their steps are mostly dependent on the fear, dependent on the current circumstances, dependent on what they see on TV, what they hear on TV, and it's very spontaneous, and it's based on those reactions, immediate reactions that probably 3 or 4 guys who are in charge of the ruling party today decide eventually as the different civil resistance activities go on the streets. It was exactly the same with the elections. It was the same with the Charles Michel's document. And for the last 3-4 years, this is the situation we are witnessing constantly. The problem here also is that unfortunately, we do not have, and I would say here, we do not have a strong message from Washington for sometimes now as we used to have before. We do not have as much engagement and as much involvement from Washington as we are used to. And it's not that we do not appreciate all the work done by President Michel himself or the members of European Parliament, but we all know, and we do not need to be shy about it, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, that the most leverage anybody ever had on the Georgian government, on any Georgian government actually, was always Washington more than any other players on the international scene. So as long as there is no very strong, very clear, very concrete message coming from the Washington, then I think that we will be witnessing much worse developments that we are seeing today. Yesterday, actually, many people in the morning were predicting transfer of Mr. Saakashvili to the hospital because of the high-level visits to Georgia. Unfortunately, government did it in absolutely wrong way. And it caused even more problems than the solution to those problems, than easing the problem rather than, yeah. And I don't know what was the dialogue with the Minister of Foreign Affairs or Prime Minister, but at least we do not see any step back or any reconsideration of the steps taken by the various government institutions and representatives. So just to finish here, I think that if we look at different parts of this puzzle simultaneously and not just the conditions that prisoner Saakashvili is kept today, then we will see pretty clearly that the biggest problem with this government is that they are involved in a kind of a game that might bring Georgia to anywhere, not necessarily to Russia and to Kremlin, to Belarus type of situation, but anywhere, including simply losing the state or whatever is left of the state that we have today.
Thanks a lot. And I would just briefly add that my greatest fear now, when I see very weakened Georgia and permanent chaos in Georgia, etc., is that in current situation, current regional situation, new reality so-called, when Kremlin, Turkey, Azerbaijan promoting some 3+3 formats and etc., such a weakened country can be very good to manipulate, to make the country enter some formats and etc., and it will just end Georgia's development way towards NATO, European Union, etc. Ms. Salome Samadashvili, one of our guests asked a good question, and I would address it to you, whether you believe that extraditing Mikhail Saakashvili to Ukraine is a way out, and it may help, and Saakashvili can agree on this. Is it some kind of compromise, please? Your microphone is off.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Yes. Well, I cannot speak on behalf of Saakashvili, obviously, so I can only just share my opinion here. Let's just put it this way. I do not believe that there are situations which have no solutions, and Saakashvili's current condition. I mean, let's look at it that way. For the Georgian dream, Saakashvili in prison is a serious problem because, I do not see how the UNM or the UNM, first of all, can calm down as long as Saakashvili is in the condition where it is now. So it means prolonged period of instability in the Georgian political environment, and that is a problem for the Georgian dream. We have put forward, our faction has put forward some possible legal solutions that would postpone Saakashvili's prison term until he's granted free and fair trial with his participation. That would require amendment of the criminal code in order to create this opportunity, but obviously the government is not even considering that. So eventually, negotiations with the Ukrainians and his return to Ukraine as a citizen, I honestly think that the Georgian dream would be foolish not to be considering this solution. How plausible, given Saakashvili's position, I'm not sure, to be honest, but Saakashvili in prison in Georgia is a serious challenge to the Georgian dream. Let's have no doubt to that. And it is a challenge in terms of moving forward, because I want to quickly respond to our one of the best friends of our country, Mr. Kubilius, that I share completely I take his criticism of the opposition also, and I do think that we also need to present, because we are very often talking to our friends about the problems without offering what is our vision for solving the problem. And I think that this is a next thing for the opposition to present to our friends in the West how we see the solution to this situation, not only in terms of the Western policies. And here I will just quickly say a few things which I think is important. There was a discussion whether or not this government is deliberately taking Georgia away from the Western future. I would say it's not important whether they are deliberately taking Georgia away from the Western future or whether they are being so bad that the West gives up on us, because the result would be the same. So I think that in terms of the Western policies towards this government, the fundamental assumption on which the Western policies have been resting for the past, I would say 15, 20 years, because those policies were designed back in the UNM time. I don't think the West has calibrated or recalibrated the policies since the change of the government. The fundamental assumption that you have a partner in the face of the Georgian dream that wants the, rapprochement with the West, that assumption has to change. And then the West has to recalibrate its policies, which, basically need to treat the Georgian dream for what it is, the government which basically by its inaction is taking country away from its European future.
Thanks a lot. Ambassador Kelly, the question is very simple and widely discussed, whether United States should be more direct with its statements. And our common friend, Ambassador Shotovinera, just tweeted that he is asking Georgia's Western friends not to make diplomatic statements and stay silent when such developments are observed in the country. So would you say there are some concrete specific tools United States must do now, what they didn't do before, maybe in many years, and maybe for State Department to be more direct in its public statements, for society, Georgian people, understand that it's not about shaking hands anymore. You understand what I mean, I think. Because till that moment, everyone keeps smiling, saying hello, shaking hands on TV. So part of Georgian society still believe that Georgia is moving towards NATO and European Union. Honestly speaking, I'm very sorry to say that I don't think so anymore. So do you believe this is the moment when time has come to be more powerful, more direct, please?
Thanks for that question. And I'd like to start my answer that I completely agree with my old friend Tina that there has been a real lack, I think, of a strong voice from Washington, and I think that there's been a not unreasonable calculation by the ruling party that it can continue on a road which is, I think, very antithetical to the principles of Western democracy, and that's the attempts to gather all the reins of power to the executive. This is really the underlying problem in, I think, Georgia's aspirations to become a truly Western-style democracy, and that's the lack of checks and balances, the lack of a legislative branch and a judiciary branch which presents a check against executive power. There has been, I think, we've had a real distracted administration. I think that is inevitable when an administration takes power, as it tries to get its people into place and develop policies. And that obviously, I think that there needs to be a heck of a lot more engagement in what's going on, not just in Georgia, but in the entire South Caucasus, with the rise of Russia and Turkey, two liberal powers, in trying to dictate terms to the three Caucasus states. I am not in power. I am glad not to be in power. I'm enjoying my life in academia. However, I think that there do have to be some steps, I think, to make sure that the Georgian Dream Party adhere to very clear that absent these return to these reforms and implementation of the reforms, we are going to have to look at who the European and Western community of nations. And so I think, we do have a responsibility to support those aspirations.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador. And Mr. Kubilius, could you please tell us what should be, like, for Europe the same? Mr. Charles Michel tried to arrange some process with between Georgian government and opposition. It failed. So what should be the next step? Maybe to try to arrange some compromise about Saakashvili. I mean, I don't know, taking him to Ukraine, for example, or some other ways?
Well, you know, it's not an easy task to have an answer. First of all, of course, you know, I would say that ruling party should be concerned about the whole, you know, the whole perception in the West, you know, both in United States and in the European Union, of the situation, how Georgia is looking like, you know, and of course, you know, that picture which is becoming worsening and worsening, you know, which was very strange to hear and to listen. I don't know how such a damage can be, you know, improved. I would say that ruling party should look into that as a very serious matter. How, you know, how their leaders are speaking and how that is perceived. You know, in not only in Georgia, where maybe, you know, voters for Georgian Dream like such a, you know, language, but in the Baltic, in Western community, that is really totally unacceptable. Then, of course, is a picture of how it looks like when former President Saakashvili is, you know, on hunger strike and does not receive, you know, proper medical treatment. Again, this is really, you know, very very bad, you know, for Georgia, you know, to have such a picture, and that can be proved, of course, by ruling party. If they would understand that they are responsible also, you know, for bringing back Georgia to normality. So I think that really, you know, of course, now we need to try to find a way how to resolve this, you know, what we can call Saakashvili issue. I would again, you know, appeal to former President Saakashvili, really asking him to stop his hunger strike, and then, you know, to look into other possibilities, extradition to Ukraine or whatever. You know, I think that everything is possible, but now it's a question of, you know, days and health condition. And the last point, really, I think that EU should be much more clear on evaluation of the situation. You know, not just waiting for, I don't know when next EU-Georgia summit will come, where perhaps some kind of bureaucratic language would be put. We need to have evaluation, you know, now, serious evaluation with really all the aspects to be discussed, you know, both, you know, on implementation of those, you know, obligations which unfortunately Georgian government did not manage to implement, like, you know, you know, reforms in judicial system and things like that. Also, you know, how in EU we can, you know, consider Georgian, you know, government promises when agreement of Sharm el-Sheikh was broken by the ruling party. So, you know, what is next? Can we ask, you know, ruling party to make some kind of promises, you know, and then to wait, will they fulfill or not? So there are a lot of things which really on the EU side we need to have clear evaluation, you know, and that would be very helpful. You know, that would be our assistance to Georgian people, to Georgian society, in order really to overcome this really difficult period of time, and where, you know, easy exit from such a situation is not very clear, you know, not very clear how to come to that exit.
Very short question, Mr. Kubilius. Do you know anything about European support to Georgia? It was discussed that it will be conditional, and then maybe there will not be support. Are there any news now?
I don't know exactly details. As I understand, Georgian government refused to take second tranche, which was conditional, and Georgian government was not able to fulfill those conditions. So that is where we are, EU really is offering some kind of assistance, financial assistance, whatever, but that assistance is conditional. Other countries are, especially associated trio countries, like Moldova or Ukraine, they are using those opportunities and they are fulfilling conditions. Georgian government decided not to fulfill conditions.
But this is only like one, this is only one case, and there are lots of different kind of help provided by the European Union. I was interested if there are any new approach towards this support.
No, our approach always is very simple, more for more, less for less. If the country is backsliding, then it should expect that also EU assistance would diminish, and that is, that damages, really not only Georgia, it damages also, all the trio countries' possibilities, to ask for, more ambitious geopolitical, approach from EU side. The Eastern Partnership Summit is coming. We are trying to, to convince EU institutions on more ambitious approach, how to speed up integration. But we have always very simple question. But when we're talking with institutions, they are saying, look, what kind of more ambitious and more advanced approach we can put if Georgia is backsliding as it is now, as we see now.
Thanks a lot. And I will anyway, I understand that anyone wants to discuss Saakashvili's case because it's most important at the moment right now, but I would ask Ms. Khidasheli, could you please anyway comment a bit about the current situation for Georgia regarding the regional situation, like this kind of political environment inside of the country, how it affects Georgian role in regional and wider region atmosphere environment, please.
Yeah, I think answer to this question is exactly the whole point of Russia's actions in Georgia, right? Not to have an example of democracy, not to have an example of success in these parts of the world, because it will affect the regional situation. It will affect the others in the region, and it might raise optimism amongst the people in different countries of a wider region. I don't mean obviously just the South Caucasus, but in wider region for moving forward and being on the same path for the success and more closeness to the European Union and more closeness to the NATO kind of security and so on and so forth. This is exactly the whole point, that regional leadership that Georgia claimed for so long, well, it's not just lost, but also it's kind of proving, today Georgia is proving that one of the leaders, when I was Minister of Defense, I had a meeting with one of the leaders in this region, I won't name the country, does not really matter, who asked me very cynically that, where are you after 30 years of fighting for European Union and for NATO? Do you think you are better off than we are or all your neighbors are? And this is exactly the answer to this question, is exactly the point for the Russian Federation. It's exactly the point for the countries in these parts of the world, or anywhere actually for that matter in this world, who are fighting against the freedom and who are fighting against the well-being of nations and strong sovereignty of nations. You mentioned 3+3 in one of your questions, and actually to strengthen your point, unfortunately, we should remember that in this couple of weeks that feelings are high, that people are on the streets, that we are all talking either about the stolen elections or about the prison conditions of the third president of Georgia. It somehow went by that Georgia restarted basically all the activities with Iran. The activities that were frozen before, since 2015, we were sort of following all these actions of the Western democracies, United States, and now it was in the news and nobody actually paid any attention to it, that we are back to this scene. It might be, it might have quite a serious results for Georgia in a long run if you don't pay proper attention to it. But the reason why Egor actually, some of us were saying that yeah, we do not see necessarily that Georgia is moving to Russia, that you've reacted quite rightly, is that we are not moving anywhere. The major reason or major feeling that we all have is that we are stuck, we are stopped, we are frozen. We are frozen somehow in a moment. I'm looking at a very good friend of ours, Ted Jonas, now, and somehow, sometimes when I watch TV or I talk myself about, for example, the prison conditions and about very basic things of democracy and state, modern democratic, liberal democratic state, I have a feeling that we are stuck in a moment when Ted first came to Georgia some more than 2 decades ago, and was talking to us with this terminology of due process and rule of law. And Salome will agree with me because she was working for NDI at that moment. We had no idea what he was talking about, what the due process was. Yeah, we did not even know how to translate those words, and we are somewhere there. This is the biggest tragedy of this country. That we are back there, back to those days when we were we were discovering completely new things, completely new terminology, completely new language. That was the language of an independent sovereign state that obviously we did not know anything about. This is the only reason. It's not that we do not see what are the problems. It's not that we do not see that actions of the Georgian government, whether facilitated or not, whether, as Salome said, and I completely agree, whether intentional or not, are serving, most of the time, are serving Kremlin's purpose. We do see it. But the bigger feeling is that we are not moving anywhere. We are stuck at one moment of Georgia's stateness, and nothing is happening after that. And this is obviously the biggest problem we have. And just to finish it, the Charles Michel documents, the developments around Charles Michel's document that was mentioned so many times here, showed pretty well, I would say, demonstrated pretty well why we are stuck like that. Because on the one hand, yes, it is absolutely right, the Georgian Dream withdrew from the agreement and refused to comply to it. But at the same time, we should not forget that UNM never signed it. In the first case, yeah, they signed it after the Georgian Dream withdrew from it, but well, the reasons why Salome is not there anymore was exactly refusal of signing Charles Michel's document, and this is why we are stuck. This is actually the best demonstration of the political problem and the problem of the political dynamics absent from Georgia.
Thanks a lot, and we are almost out of time. I would like to ask Ambassador Kelly, because like the situation now, yeah, it's very interesting. It's very dangerous from some point of view. But yesterday, when I saw President Saakashvili being violently taken somewhere from the car, he was lied about the place, as we discussed, where they were moving him. This calls from the State Department, on behalf of State Department, they call for like normal justice for him and etc. But it's clear from my point of view to all of us that there cannot be a justice for President Saakashvili under Georgian Dream and Ivanishvili's government. So do you think it should be some other call from on behalf of State Department now in regard to Saakashvili? Because we will never see justice. Ambassador.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy for me to agree with you that it would be the proper thing for the State Department to say that he can't get a fair trial under this government. I mean, it's true. But I do think that there is a middle way here, and you know, one of your guests here, maybe it was Salome, suggested that the way through this is to ensure that Mr. Saakashvili gets a real fair hearing. I mean, he was tried in absentia, which I think is by itself. I don't really find that to be an acceptable way to judge somebody. But it would seem to me that because of the state of the Georgian judiciary, which has shown that it is in many cases very politically motivated and not really adjudicating in a fair and objective way many cases, in this case has become so incredibly polarizing and even toxic that he really, even if you had a fair and objective judiciary, he couldn't get a fair trial in Georgia. I mean, that is something you see happen in the United States, that a trial will be moved to a new location because the person under indictment can't get a fair trial because of the political atmosphere. So I think something like that has to happen with Saakashvili, with some kind of independent panel, or even have it done offshore from Georgia, and Ukraine might be a place. So yeah, that's the way I see it.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador Kelly. And actually, yeah, we're out of time already. So I'm very grateful to you, to Mr. Kubilius, to Ms. Samadashvili, Ms. Tinatin, Khidasheli, and all our participants for the discussion. It will be distributed online tomorrow, both on YouTube, and I will send the link to all of you. Thanks a lot for your time and for taking part.